welcome to the PCFX Fan Club podcast. We're doing an interview episode this week, so me and Matt will interview a fellow named Vinnk. Vinnk runs a YouTube channel called Famicom Dojo and is one of the oldest channels in regards to like Japanese games in Japan. And one of the big benefits he had was living in Japan for the last like 20 years. So he's seen, the used game market kind of evolve over that period of time. And he also runs a online retro game store called Japan Retro Direct as well. So we wanted to talk to him about his experience of seeing kind of the PCFX evolve, its aftermarket specifically, because, the PCFX died in 1998. So, he went out there a few years after that. But, how the PCFX, as from used software and things like that, how the prices have evolved and availability as well. So that's a big part of what today's show is about. Vinnk is also weirdly important to this podcast in the sense that like a big reason why I even got into the PCFX in the first place is because of him. So in a lot of ways, I don't think this podcast would exist without him. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy listening to the episode. One thing I've kind of like talked a little bit to Filler about, and I think I talked to you forever ago when we talked on my, other podcast.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of ways, the PCFX fan club exists because of you. Because like the journey I've taken to get to this point is very defined by, Famicom Dojo and selling import games, and then you talking about the PCFX and kind of changing, presenting me like a different perspective on the system and things like that.
Oh, it has such a bad reputation. Okay.
Yeah. And so like it's just been a long path, but so it's like you're like a weirdly important person in my life, despite mostly just doing it from afar. So you've been a very big impact on me. You have found you've given me ways to spend my life doing things that most people probably don't care about. So, but it's been fun. It's been good.
We care.
Thank you.
We care.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. But yeah, I do think like if it wasn't for you, this show probably wouldn't exist. So thank you
my
for
goodness.
That.
Well, thank
also,
you.
you were the one who kind of like, I was trying to have you not come on my show. I remember I was like pushing back because I was too nervous, and you really insisted. And so you doing that got me to start inviting people on the show. So that's kind of the other thing as well.
I mean, I didn't realize that you called it one controller one controller port because you didn't want anybody else to play with you. I didn't realize.
It is literally because I was, at the time, a lot of websites were like a staff of people, right? So I was like, oh, well, I'll make something that's just me. Same thing with podcasts, right? So I was like, one controller port, maybe that makes sense. But, I definitely, have since reached out to a lot more people in there. And so it's definitely not the focus as much. But I mean, in the end, one controller port is still just basically me, right? So, So, but yeah. One thing I'm kind of curious about, because you previously did Famicom Dojo and things like that, right?
Sure.
What year did that start, by the way?
Oh my goodness, 2004. I 2004? Think. Oh my goodness, are we nearing 20 years?
Oh, 20th anniversary, baby.
No, it might be 2005. It might. Oh, okay. I should know this. Oh my goodness. But it was in the very early days of YouTube. It was at a time in YouTube where you couldn't make a video longer than 10 or 15 minutes. So that's one of the reasons our format was always so breakneck at first. And we didn't do so many. It was like before the era of the deep dive. So that's why we made our videos very specific to like one thing, because we didn't have long enough to talk about a lot of things. It was, yeah.
And so, were you in your early 20s then as when you were doing that?
Yeah. Okay. Early to mid 20s. Oh,
early
my
mid-20s.
goodness.
Yeah. So like, you got on the internet at a time where a lot of that stuff wasn't really discussed all that much, right? Like I think people were talking about it on forums and things like that, but it wasn't as easy to find like a central location or somebody putting a narrative together for information about like what is a Famicom, what is, these other Japanese games that are specific to that era and things like that. So, I feel like there's a long journey for us to go on today. So I was kind of curious, like what led up to Famicom Dojo? Like, how did you get into games in the first place? And what do you think led you to that point where you started exploring,
Oh,
Japanese games as a whole and getting into, wanting to talk about them on the internet and things like that?
that is a very good question. I mean, when it
Yeah.
comes to games in general, I can't really remember a time when I wasn't fascinated by them, because
Mhm.
I was born in 1980, so that's when games had already existed and they were starting. And by the time I got old enough to know what a game was, that's basically the time when the NES hit. And then
Yeah.
and it was all over for me. I'd played in television in 2600 at friends' houses or whatever, but when this thing launched, I was like, well, that's how my life goes now. It was just fantastic. But coming from a household that didn't have as much money as my friends did, I wasn't buying so many games. I couldn't afford to buy so many games. We'd rent games occasionally, so almost every game I played was a rental. I owned very, very few. But because I was so interested in them and I couldn't get the physical carts, I read everything I could about them, and that meant going to the library and borrowing, issues of Nintendo Power and all the other gaming magazines. So like, I I started, and still to this day, I read about games a lot more than I play them, like way, way more. And as I get older, I find that part of the history is just as interesting as the games themselves. Just
I think a lot of times with a lot of people who talk about games online, it's always a problem of finding time to play games because talking about them takes up so much
oh yeah,
energy and air in your life, right? So
yeah. And Famicom Dojo, there is a well, okay, gosh, hold on, I gotta. Your question had many parts, so
yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm kind of interested, like, how you even got to
all right.
Famicom Dojo in the first place in a lot of ways. So,
Let's see. So
because
I was very interested in games. I continued to be when I got to college. I found out that the games that I had been previously playing are now retro, and
yeah,
and I met a Japanese exchange student in my first year of college, from Osaka or whatever. His name was Kazuki. Shout out to someone I haven't seen in.
maybe he's listening right now.
Yeah, maybe. But he was there, and he had and he had this system which I had completely not cared about in the United States, called the Sega Saturn, because I always thought it to be a bit of a joke compared to the PlayStation and the N64. The library was anemic and nothing seemed. And he's like, no, 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 come with me. And he had these, those binders you used to put CDs in that could hold like 200 CDs, just like
Yeah.
Matt, I have one here somewhere, but like just one of those. Matt, he had like three of those completely filled with like the best of the Sega Saturn games. Radiant Silvergun was in there, like just amazing stuff. And he's like, let's play some games, and he let me borrow a bunch of them, and I'm like, okay, I like import games now. And that's when I started importing, mainly for like Sega Saturn, Super Famicom, because it was incredibly easy to modify.
Yeah.
And N64, because again, all you needed was an adapter.
Yeah. Was turbo-graphx and PC Engine a part of this experience for you at all, or was that kind of just a separate thing at this point in your life?
TurboGrafx was something that I was always very interested in from reading about it in game magazines, but one that I never actually saw on sale ever, except like when I visited the Mall of America. I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like. So like it was something that wasn't even for sale in my town, but that I was always intrigued about. I bought a TurboGrafx while I was still living in the United States at a secondhand game store, and I had that system and Bonk and like a couple others, and I think Superstar Soldier and a few others, and I thought it was really, really great. But like, I played it long after it was,
Yeah.
But the thing is, once I got to Japan, I think that's the system that I discovered, like that and Neo Geo, which is something I wish I had discovered slightly more at the time, because we'll get to regrets later. But like, PC Engine was at the point when I came to Japan the first time in 2001, where the system had just had its last game 2 years prior. So like,
were you still in college when you went to Japan the first time, or was this a separate?
Okay. I was in college. I lived in Nagasaki. What did I pick up while I was there? I picked up PC Engine Duo R. I picked up a Neo Geo CD system because I was like, I don't want to pay $20 a game for Neo Geo cartridges.
Oh gosh.
Again, regrets will come back later. But at the time, the Neo Geo CD games were like $10, so I picked up a very nice library while I was there. Got a bunch of PC Engine, Super Famicom, a lot of Sega Saturn because I was still really into Sega Saturn. And I was there for 4 months. I came back with, I had to learn how to use the post office because I had bought way more than I could possibly bring back. And from there, like, I kind of knew that I wanted to be back in Japan. Yeah, I went as an exchange student with no real intention to live here. It was something I wanted to do before I had to get a real job,
Yeah.
And then, while I was here, I talked to a bunch of other foreigners who were living here, and they're like, you don't have to get a real job just yet. You could teach English. So it's like
the usual path, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, time to delay life for a little bit, and I thought I'd do 1 more year in Japan, like working here. I was going to come back for a year, and that was very nearly 20 years ago. So, I've been here since 2004.
Yeah, 20 years. So when you started Famicom Dojo, you had just moved to Japan for the most part.
I'm trying to think if it was in my first or second year. Basically, the idea of Famicom Dojo kind of started before I moved, because my friend Sean, who's the other guy he was working with another guy to do a series called Powit TV or something, or and like, they were experimenting with the idea of making videos, but there's a lot of them were focused on like action figures and stuff like that. They had a couple gaming videos, but I'm like, oh man, I want to do this. So while he was visiting me in Japan, I'm like, we're starting something, and the name is based off is a game store here in my town called Famicom Dojo, which I think is the best name of any store ever. The idea of it came from me going to the store and hanging out with the owner, and the owner of the store has sadly passed away in the last couple of years. So she was a wonderful older woman who like just was just the friendliest person in the whole world. And her son Hiro, who spoke some English, which really helped when I first got there. And he was just telling me all these stories about Showa era running a video game store, stuff like that. Some of the sketchy things that they would do, like
if you can't define what Showa era is, I have a vague idea what it is, but people listening might not know as well. So
basically, Showa is like the post-war era, but it went up until 1989. So basically. So basically, you're looking at like the late 60s, 70s, early 80s. Well, most of the 80s is part of Showa. And but when you say it now, you're often kind of referring to like 70s, 80s.
Gotcha. So was this store open during that time frame as well, or?
It was one of the very first video game stores in Japan that was a video game store.
Oh wow!
According to his own telling, I cannot verify this, because there's very little information out there about it. But it was at a time where I believe the store was around for a long time, and it was a toy store for a long time. And then it switched over to video games when the Famicom came out. But at first, they had such a hard time getting Famicoms that they couldn't keep them in stock. They just could not keep it in stock. So they had to buy the Super Cassette Vision system. Which is kind of like,
I bought one of those games once. It's like a Mahjong game that I got from, I think it was on your store. I bought a copy.
I was just like, what is this?
Yeah, they look like this.
Yeah,
They're really
yeah.
little square blocky. They've got instructions for how to play it right on the cart. I like them, but it's about in television level, I would say. Maybe like
Yeah.
it's not. But like they were selling those because Famicom was unable to be acquired. But anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know if their store was originally called Famicom Dojo, but it's been around ever since, and it's kind of on its last legs now, to tell you the honest truth. After the owner passed away, it's only open now occasionally. Like you call ahead and the store will be open, but nobody's running it full time anymore.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but Famicom Dojo is kind of the idea that, like, when I was talking with these people, I'm like, these stories are going to be lost if nobody gets them recorded. And originally I thought I was going to write a book or something like that, but I'm way too lazy. So like making a series of videos or whatever. But the thing is, at the time, like, since YouTube was in its infancy, if you wanted to make videos at that time, you had to have a camera, you had to have a computer capable of doing, you had to have the skill to put together videos. Now, anybody with a camera or a laptop can make videos. So like, I don't that there's a less of a pressing need, because right now I feel like so much of everything has been covered by so many people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the time, I felt like there was a need for Famicom Dojo. Do you know what I mean? And what's funny is I run into a lot of larger YouTubers, like just in comment sections or on forums or at Tokyo Game Show or something, and they'll be like, Vinnk from Famicom Dojo. And I'm like, there's no way you should know me. You're like a big YouTuber. I've got this, but like, I think it was influential.
Yeah.
Like in the early days, I think it was influential, but it never led it to being popular.
Yeah, I mean, it was really early. You kind of got there too early, I think, in some ways, but you're ahead of your time in that regard. So,
in many ways. Sorry, I'm trying to get my water. But yeah, it's and the thing is, when it could have been a thing that we could have made maybe more popular, that's around the time that we were getting married, having kids, and just getting really busy. Like, had YouTube existed a little bit earlier, we might have been really. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah. So I think something that, like, so it sounds like you getting introduced to the Saturn and then you moving to Japan and Famicom Dojo all coincided there. Yeah. Sorry if my memory is like wrong. I don't recall PCFX really ever coming up on Famicom Dojo in any fashion. When were you first made aware of the PCFX, and like what was your initial exposure and what was your experience like with it?
Oh my goodness. I first became aware of the PCFX my first time in Japan. In the clearance bins. I'm like, what is this?
This is 2001?
2000.
Okay, 2001.
I knew of the PCFX from reading game magazines before. Like, I remember EGM's like best of 2090. They were like rating the consoles, and they were talking about the future PC engine, which was going to be the PCFX. And I'm like, whoa, that looks like a computer. It must be really high tech. And then it never came here, and I kind of forgot about it until I got to Japan and saw that they were clearancing. Now let's reopen that regrets book again. There was a store that I was at in 2001 that basically was selling, like, I think it was PCFX games were like 2 for 500 yen, like brand new. Like, they were just getting rid of their section of them, and I didn't have a PCFX, so. But I remember thinking, there's the big box games and stuff like that. And I remember the Anime Freak series specifically, because at the time I was very into anime, especially things like Tenchi Muyo and things like that, which seemed to be something that the Anime Freak series was really kind of going.
I think Volume 3 has Tenchi Muyo on the cover for it.
It's over there somewhere. But I almost bought it even without the system.
Yeah.
Then in 2004, my local game store had a PCFX that they were selling boxed for about $50. And I was like, oh man, I totally want this, but I'm like on my bike, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I can't bring this back. so I'm going to come back later and pick it up. And it was gone by then. And like, but now having like 3 types of, I'm like, okay, now I want a PCFX. I'm like, having been denied it, it's like, and I did not find one for $50 again, but I picked up a loose one at another game store for $60 or something like that.
I know it's maybe hard to remember, but like, what was the frequency of which you were coming across PCFX at this point? Because like 1998 was like the last set of games that came out, right? That was kind of when the system was kind of closed out. So was it like, were you seeing it around frequently, or is it like a rarity whenever you found one at that point?
It was I would compare it to me seeing TurboGrafx stuff in the United States, or like Atari Lynx or something like that. Like, it existed, but like it was something where you're going to a game section and there's like 2 or 3 PCFX games like in the corner. They're reasonably priced, but like, I mean, I guess probably in 2001 it might have been more, but I wasn't looking for it. So like, I don't really know. But like, around 2006, 2007 maybe, I was looking for it, and then it was not very common. But it was also not rare enough that I appreciated it enough when I saw them, because now if I see anything PCFX, I usually buy it. Like, unless it's ridiculously priced, I usually just buy it. Like, but at the time, I was more picky about it. You're gonna hate this story, but like my first PCFX died, and I had no way of fixing it. I had no way of fixing it, and at the time, nobody wanted a broken PCFX. Like, there was zero market for anybody. I tried. I went on the PC Engine FX forums, and I'm like, I got a broken. If you pay me the shipping, you can have it. And no takers. And it was taking up space, and we were just about to move into our new house. Like, I was getting married, it was very whatever. And I just took it to the dump. And I watched it go, like, as it was being thrown into a truck. And I'm like, I'm going to regret this someday. And I'm like, because there's a finite number of them out there, and someone could have fixed it. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't, but someone could have. But like, there wasn't that idea that it would ever really be something that would be valued. To the extent that it seems to be now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very similar experience. My buddy had a Vectrex.
Ooh.
And and it was, but I mean, it like the case was loose, and like parts were literally falling out of it.
Yep.
And at that point, I was just like, dude, I'm like, just get rid of it. But I feel bad for being like the person who gave him that advice, because like you said, somebody, like, there's parts on there. Like, there's not that many Vectrexes. They don't deserve to be in a dump. Yeah, it's hard.
Definitely isn't as big of a deal, but I think everybody has that moment, because like, I threw out like an old PS2 I had at one point. Just like, the disk drive stopped working. I was using it solely for Final Fantasy 11, then the hard drive stopped working. And then at some point, I was like, I don't know, 16 or something, and I was just like, oh, it doesn't work. So throw it out in the trash kind of thing. So I think we all have that experience at least once. Then at some point,
But like,
lesson learned.
Yeah. But like,
but also don't keep junk around your house. Maybe is the other thing.
It's given me the wrong. It's sent the wrong message. Now I don't throw anything. Like, I've just become this. You can tell behind me. Like, I've just become this hoarder. But like, so. And that kind of leads to why I opened a game store. It's so that I could. It's an alibi. That's all it is. It's an alibi.
So you have an online web store, basically, at Japan Retro Direct. So and you do sell PCFX games on there when available. I don't know how often you have them. I feel like it's kind of in and out.
There's like a few of them. Like, I think I got like 6 or 7 games up right now.
Rolling it back a little bit.
Sure.
you mentioned you were exposed to the PCFX through Edge magazine and things like that. You said you saw the Tower of Power, right?
Sure,
the PCFX version of the Tower of Power. I think when I talked to Video Game Esoterica, I think he said the same thing of just like it just looked really cool.
Oh yeah.
so but I think, when you got to Japan, you picked it up. Was it more of a mystique around it, or was there like something specifically about the software you were seeing that made you interested in it, or like what do you think pushed you? What drove you to get that over? Like, I don't know if there's other systems that you kind of ended up passing up on, and why would you choose a PCFX over one of those, right?
I mean, definitely the idea that it was supposed to be a successor to the PC Engine. At that point, I was very much into the PC Engine, and a lot of the franchises from that, like the Una series and things like that, had entries on the PCFX, and like, I don't know. At the time, I was just trying. I wanted to have unique experiences with games, things that but my knowledge of Japanese was not great. And that was probably the barrier that kept the PCFX from being like my favorite system ever, just simply because a lot of the games were fairly like very, very hard to play. The ones that I played a lot when I got the system were the ones that I could play. Like I had, what is it? The Shanghai 4, the Great Wall.
Triple threat.
And like I had, Power League. I had, I had Chip Chan Kick. I don't anymore. I'm Chan kicking myself about that one. I had Zenki. I had what is it, Zeroigar? Like I had all the ones that I could play. And I quite enjoyed those. But it took me a while to get more into the library of games I couldn't play.
Did you try anything at that time, really, or did you just kind of piece out from the beginning and say this looks way too much text? I'll just kind of.
I tried like some of the software. Well, for example, as I mentioned, I was a Tenchi Muyo fan, so I picked that one up. And a lot of the dialogue in that is spoken, which I deal with a lot better than text.
Yeah.
Some of the RPGs I played around with, Farland Story, stuff like that. It's games that I was kind of missing a great deal of the plot, but like I could still find enjoyment from the games.
Yeah.
Galaxy Fräulein Una, it was so similar to the anime and it was basically just the anime that with minor changes and occasional mini games. That one was fine. That one was a good one to play. Last Imperial Prince was a game that was fairly text heavy but still playable without really without really knowing anything. And okay, now I have to say, the fan translation of Welcome to Pia Carrot remains one of my favorite PCFX games.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
I believe I actually reached out to you.
Yes.
When I was playing the game, because I wanted to like compliment you on your translation, and I wanted more people to play the game. So I went and I bought out every store I could find that had this game. And I had like 20 copies of it at one point. And I was like linking your translation video or whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I just wanted more people to play it. I'm like, buy it, patch it. There's emulators out there. Play a PCFX game, but all that really did was lead to a bunch of people going, hey, I can just download this. So that's why I still have about 5 copies of this game. So even all those years later, but like, it was great. It was great to be able to play it in a translated version on the system, because at this point in my life now, I can play a Japanese game, but I still don't find it to be the best experience because it feels like work. Like it's the same. I could pick a manga up off the shelf too, and use maybe not a hard manga, but an easy manga. But it would be a non-pleasurable experience, because I would need to probably look up some of the words or figure out which is slang and which is standard. It's just
Mhm.
My time is so limited. My free time is so limited and so precious to me that, like, unless it's something that I truly, truly want to play through, like how I played through the Sakura Tyson games before a translation existed,
Mhm.
I'm not going to. I will just, and that's unfortunately where it stands with me for a lot of the PCFX games.
I'm curious, like, I have significantly less Japanese ability than you guys. So, one thing I've relied a lot on is like machine translation
Sure.
and stuff. And what I usually do with machine translation is, you get a bunch of garbage text essentially. It's kind of formatted, but it's not really good. So what ends up happening is I just take like the bits and pieces out of a sentence and just try to correlate it with whatever's happening. And I'm just like, cool, go. The rest of the information, like, cool if I pick it up. Otherwise, I'm going. When you're playing games in Japanese, do you feel like there's a similar feeling of like, I'll use the words I know, look up like maybe a word or two, but otherwise, as long as I get the general gist of the scene, I won't worry about like making sure I understand every single part of this sentence or something like that. I don't know if you both have experience with that and could speak to that.
Not nearly to the point that you have, but I've been called to occasionally translate things, and when that happens, I have to focus very, very carefully on what's
I guess more
going
like
on.
in a pleasure
But
sense,
if I'm
like
just
you're just playing a game,
if I'm just playing the game, if I pick up 30% and the visuals give me enough information to go on, that's enough for me. I can live with that.
Is that a similar experience for you, Matt? Or
it is, yeah, definitely. I think learning to gloss over the stuff that you don't understand is really important for being able to enjoy something, or even to like get to a point where you want to maybe look up some vocabulary that you don't know and things like that. It's good to be able to just say, okay, I'm reading these 3 sentences and, 50% of it, I'm not entirely sure. But when you just focus on all the things that and suddenly you realize, oh, hey, like, I actually kind of get what they're saying here. I get the joke, whatever it is. And,
and obviously for a full translation, you do a much more comprehensive look over that text and stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's like a different. I view that as a different experience than playing a game in Japanese per se.
Sure.
But
there's a lot of going very thoroughly over the Japanese and then also going very thoroughly over the English.
Yeah. I remember, this is kind of unrelated, but I was trying to get a Japanese word once for Nintendoji on the Nintendo 3DS. And there's like a word that I didn't know what it was. And Cargadin helped me look it up. She's a fan in the fan translation community. And she sent me like a cookbook from like the 1700s. And it was like, oh, I found the word here. And it was just like an old kanji for like dried fish or something.
Yep.
And I was just like, oh, okay. I'm surprised you were to pull that out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure that she had a process to get there, but like, it's crazy to see like the depth you might need to go to find a word. Cause like, I couldn't find any like mention of it on the modern internet really. Yeah. So, but
I played Team Innocent many, many years ago when my Japanese wasn't nearly as good. And I'm I should really play through it again because I enjoyed it, but but to this day, I'm not entirely sure what was going on. You know what I mean? Like I could tell when danger was approaching. I could tell when a character was upset about something, but but the nuts and bolts of it, it's still a game I recommend to anybody getting into PCFX. I totally recommend it. But I'm really hoping a fan translation of that one happens, and that's probably why I don't play it again.
I don't think you've listened to our last episode. We actually
I'm winking while I say that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if it happens, but yeah,
I know.
I was surprised just how much. Because I did play a little bit of the fan translation to help with like some of the testing with it. I was surprised how much I had understood, like even before I was using machine translation and stuff, just sitting down and watching it. Right. So I think that's probably true, but I mean, it is nice to get the more nuances of the characters and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
So.
When I first came to Japan in 2001, I watched Spirited Away. because I was of course it was the new Ghibli movie. So I went and I saw it at the theater. And if you've seen that movie, you know that it's very visually stunning, and the story is very. And I watched and I was blown away by the images I was seeing, and I came up with an idea in my head of what the story was that was going on, and I was very satisfied with my interpretation of the story.
Yeah.
And then a year later, I watched it on DVD, and I was actually disappointed because the story I had created with my headcanon was, as far as I'm concerned, to this day, the definitive version.
That's the danger of this. Like, I will go and like praise a Japanese game, and every step of the way I have to be like, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. But what seems to be happening seems pretty cool.
Yes,
so
yes.
There is a danger, I feel like, in the mystique of a language that you don't understand, that sometimes, like I've had that where I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down and actually, translate this. I'm like, oh, it actually isn't all that interesting.
Yeah.
But it makes you appreciate the things that are.
So if we put Welcome to Pia Carrot aside, what are some of your favorite games on the PCFX generally today when you think about what you like about the system today? Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I mean,
I think if you talk about like your past experience, it is probably very painted by like what's, accessible. But now that you have a lot more understanding of what that market is, and then also, have more understanding of Japanese, you can kind of approach the games more on a even level between them, right?
I would say that I still really like Team Innocent. Like, despite I'd say that as a launch title, frankly, the launch titles on the system, as few as they were, I think are some of the defining games for the system. You know what I mean? You've got what Graduation Neo or whatever, or was it Angelique? Okay, it's
Graduation.
Okay, it is Graduation. And Team Innocent and and these copies of Battle Heat.
Yeah, I love Battle Heat. Battle Heat's cool. I like it a lot. So
Battle Heat. Oh, we'll talk more about that later. But Battle Heat's one that's surprisingly gone up in value. But
interesting.
Battle Heat is a game that I hated the first time I played it.
Most people do. Like, every time I see a video of somebody playing it, they're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. But they just press the buttons and then they turn it off, right?
But I think it was on GameFAQs. Someone had really broken down the controls and the timing, whatever. And I went and I played it again after that. And I'm like, oh, okay, there is something to this. I wouldn't say that it's my favorite fighter. I mean, it's not, but I think it's a defining game of the PCFX, and one that everyone should have in their library.
I'm curious because I know I previously talked to you about what genre a game like Battle Heat is, and I think I stole your definition of it. It was just a cinematic fighting game, basically.
Yeah.
Have you played other cinematic fighters? Because there are games like that on other platforms, like a Yu Yu Hakusho game kind of thing on the Super Nintendo that has a similar presentation and stuff.
Yeah. Could probably pull one out right now, but I know what you're talking about. There was one on the Game Gear too, so also Yu Yu Hakusho, but they're interesting, but a lot of them are very I don't know, they're less compelling because they are it's just static background character moving over them. I have played another one on the PCFX though, the Far East of Eden, that game, and that one's pretty good too, especially if you're a fan of the series. But it always makes me sad because I was really hoping we'd get a full-on RPG in that series. Namida was supposed to come out on that, but I can't be too mad because I didn't know about that until long after it was canceled. But but when I started researching, I was reading these old magazines that would have previews and stuff, and I'm like, could that have turned the fortunes of the PCFX around? No, it couldn't have, but it's nice to think that it might have.
Do you I mean, what is your experience? I don't think we've talked about RPGs that much. What is your experience with RPGs on the system, and what stands out to you for that?
I'm a fan of Blue Breaker. I think it's I don't think it's a deeply but I don't know. I mean, look at this. It's got kind of an almost game arts-ish style, very the mid 90s.
What did Game Arts make again? I'm trying to remember.
They made like
Lunar,
Grandia, you know, those kind of things. And like, I don't know, it's just it's bright. It's like, it's not trying to be anything, you know, it's, I wouldn't say it's a absolutely fantastic RPG, but it's charming. It's lovely. I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. Farland
Have you beaten it, or?
I don't think I've ever gotten to the end of it. No. I PCFX save files and me have a history. Because you're dealing with a save unit that has batteries in it or whatever, and I have gotten quite far in it a few times and then have lost my save. So like, if I play it again, it'll probably be on emulator just because of being able to retain a save. You know what I mean? Like, then again, I also always buy batteries at the dollar store. That's a problem too. Okay.
Would the NVBMP probably get around that kind of thing, Matt? It's like the non-volatile one. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a really nice thing, is like no batteries necessary for that. It's flash memory, so it's just going to keep, it's going to keep that information on there for
however many writes or something like that.
But, yeah. And I've got one.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, but I enjoyed my time with it. I didn't really get into Farland's story much when I got it, but like now that I hear that the translation's in process or whatever, I'm trying, do I have it? Oh, I've got it right here. Playing it a little bit, getting around. I love the style of Boundary Gate, but it's what I haven't cracked into nearly enough. I like how it looks, I like how it sounds, but I haven't delved into it enough to have a strong opinion on it.
Is that the only PCFX game that like renders polygons? I'm trying to remember. Or
no, what is it? Nurgens also renders software renders polygons.
Yeah.
I've played like the first hour or two of that just to get footage for it, but it's got a really, I don't know how to describe the style. There was the Linda Cube translation that came out. Like aesthetically, it kind of reminds me of that. I don't know if there's any relationship there, if they're completely different. But the main character in that game, he looks like a dad. Like he just looks like some random dad. I don't know what it is about him. He just looks completely normal. He's not very pretty or handsome. He just looks like a normal dude. I kind of appreciate that. So,
as a normal dude myself, yes. One that I'm trying to get another copy of right now is the what is it, Langrisser, Der Langrisser.
Der Langrisser, yeah.
Because it's a game it's a genre that I didn't really care, but like I've been playing them recently, the other games in the series, and now I really want to get it. But again, spoilers for later, but it's become a very expensive game due to the series finally getting some localization in the United, so like, and some appreciation with remakes and things like that a lot of people want to go back to the original art style.
Yeah.
That's probably the best version of it in its original style. So
yeah. I mentioned to you earlier, one of the things that you kind of helped me with was kind of understand, like, go beyond like the Wikipedia narrative of PCFX.
Oh my goodness!
Because like you even see, if I made that Team Innocent video back in like, I forget what year it was, and there's a lot of things I say in there that's not really true, because I just was kind of repeating the narrative that was out there. And I think like going through some conversations with you, and I think I talked to you a little bit about like the 18 plus stuff. I was kind of curious, like, how did you see that narrative developed? Was it there from the beginning, do you feel like, or is it something that you feel like came over time? And where do you feel like it is today, and how do you feel about that?
Before I ever owned a PCFX, it had that stigma. So it's been for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's
English speaking like community specifically, I think, right? Or I don't know if you know anyone who's Japanese who's like knows of the PCFX and stuff as well and what their feelings are, but
for Japanese people, it's seen about the same level as the PC Engine. PC Engine had some naughty games in its history too. It had the games that had the 18 plus on it. In fact, the last game ever released on the system, Dead of the Brain, was an 18 plus game. So it's. So for them, it was a continuation of something there, and like a lot of the ones that you have, like Dokusei, Classmates is what they translated too often, but Dokusei 2 is a sequel to Dokusei 1, which was an 18 plus game on the PC Engine. So like so for the people in Japan, it was a system that just was a natural continuation but at the time, like there were way more adult games on the Sega Saturn. And before the Sega Saturn, there were way more adult games on the 3DO. Like if you go for now you can say that because what was it? PCFX had what? Is it 10 adult games? 8, 10? It's not a lot. It's like 10. Let's say it's 10.
It's a little blurry because there's like the ones that are like the hard 18, then there's like the recommended 18. And then you also have the stuff where it's like, it's not marked 18, but you play the game and it has like a late night anime kind of
like the Cutie Honey game or something.
Like you might see something, but it's not like explicit in the sense of like, you're not having like a sexual scene per se, but we're going to show you a little something basically.
Sure. And a lot, and that went a long way to the reputation as well. But like, let's say that there's 10 games that could be like, you don't want to play in front of your parents. Okay. And then that's, and so like when you talk about a system that only has 80 games, that's a fair percentage. But at the same time, I would say it would be an equal percentage on the 3DO. But in the United States, no one remembers the 3DO as the porn system. Do you know what I mean? Like, CDI had quite a few adult games on it. Like I feel like, and if you want to go purely in number, here's systems that had more adult games than the PCFX. The Famicom Disk System, albeit unlicensed, but widely available. Definitely the Sega Saturn, 3DO, Laser Active had a much higher ratio of adult games. Just there's a lot. So I really feel like it's an unjust. Like if you want to use a stereotype, you can say that PCFX had a lot of anime games.
Yeah.
And that's very true. There are very few un-anime games for the system, and they stick out like a sore thumb. It's like,
I bought that copy of Zork from you after it's sitting on your store for years, and I was like, I feel bad. I'll take it.
I was doing a stream a while back, and someone commented that I finally sold my Return to Zork because it was always in the background of my stream. Oh man, you got a steal on it though. It's very expensive now, but at the time I got it, it was the game that the Japanese gamers were like, what is this doing on my anime system?
Yeah, it's got an Activision logo, which feels like a crime already for Activision to have a logo on a PCFX game.
I know. But like for the most part, like 90% of the games on that system easily are anime, and like heavily anime for all the good and bad of that whole trope. I mean, the one of the common series on it is Anime Freak, and the people who bought this system were anime freaks. Nobody was like, man, can't wait to get myself a PCFX so I can play Return to Zork and Blue Chicago Blue. It's like,
well, you did have that group of people who were like, I bought it for Namida, and I'm like, I'm curious how many people bought, like how much. I'm curious what software they bought after buying a system for Tengai Makyo, right? Like, I'm curious what that journey looked like for them, or if it was I bought a launch game and then I'm just waiting kind of thing, right?
Man, it's really hard to say because I didn't know many people who had a PCFX, and most of the people I know who had it bought it after. I don't know a single person who bought it at launch.
Yeah.
Or who will admit to have bought it at launch. I don't know. Like, I would say that in the zeitgeist of Japan right now, people do not know the PCFX exists. unless they are people like me. Like I think like it has become forgotten history, which is really unfortunate. Like, PC Engine has been brought back many times as collections, virtual consoles, the mini system, and it just sold way more when it did exist. It's featured in things like the anime and manga High Score Girl and things like that. Like, people remember it. But like, it feels like the PCFX. When I see the PCFX mentioned in something, that is important to me. I think I feel like I occasionally sent you things from, like, when I'm reading a manga and someone like mentions a PCFX or something. Full Metal Panic manga had like, why did my boyfriend break up with me? I even bought him a PCFX, and I'm like, oh, it's so great. And like, no wonder he broke up with you. Like, but like in general, like it's just sadly. So like, but that makes me love it more. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, like there's always like a feeling of like, I mean, I honestly think the main reason I talk about the PCFX is partly because it is just like, I feel like it's a system that isn't represented well. So I feel more of a need to talk about it. Like if people were like singing the praises of it all the time, I think I wouldn't be doing this today. Right. So,
yeah, I'm a Palladium defender as well. And I don't even like the Palladium, but I will defend it. But I will defend it to my dying breath.
What would you say is bigger these days, Famicom Dojo or your next expedition after that, which was opening an online store where you sell games that you buy in Japan? Like, what do you think is the scale of those things? Are they kind of equal in your mind?
I mean, it depends how you define success. But I put a lot more effort into the store that I do Famicom Dojo these days, just because it's hard to negotiate schedules and things to make content or whatever. But like the store is something where, just when I got some time, I've got stacks of games behind me. I'll just test a bunch of them and I'll take photographs of them and I'll list them during a lunch break or something. So like, it's something I can do anytime, whereas like producing new web videos to the scale that Famicom Dojo fans demand at this point it has actually made it that we produce less content because whenever we do put out something that doesn't hit that level, they let us know.
Yeah, it's tough.
But I
said it's like a new expenditure, but like, I mean, how long has it been at this point? It's like, Rising Stuff was like 10 years ago, or is that longer ago? That was your first store, Rising Stuff.
15 years ago, easily. Yeah.
And then you transitioned to Japan Retro Direct, I think, like 7 or 8 years ago. I don't remember how long
something.
That's been.
Yeah, something. Well, I mean, for a while I was selling on a site called Game Gavel, which if you ever want to go into a weird rabbit hole, look up them and the people who ran it. I mean, it's connected with the Coleco Chameleon.
Yeah.
And for
which was like kind of a scam console if somebody doesn't know.
And like it was a site that started off promisingly, but by the end I was basically the only one selling on it.
Yeah.
Like, because it was eBay, but only me. It was very strange. But like, but then when that folded, was a heartbreak because they shut it down with no notice. And I had stored, like, for every game I list, I write my own descriptions. There's no AI involved. There's no, I don't just copy Wikipedia. I put my own impressions of the games.
Yeah.
And whether I think people can play it if they don't know Japanese or not, and things like that. Because I play everything that I put up there. And when that went down, I lost 2,000 descriptions.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I get those back? And they were not helpful. And for a while, I was like, I think I'm done selling video games. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to make something on my own. And I've been building that ever since. So
I feel like I could be wrong about this. Maybe it's just I've been buying from you for so long, but I think what's like interesting about your storefront is it's a very curated thing.
Yeah, that's a way to say it. Yeah.
It's curated in a weird way. It's not curated in like this is the most in demand thing. It feels more like you picked something up and you're like, this is interesting. I'll try it. Okay, I'm gonna sell it now. like it doesn't necessarily feel like you're buying like copies of Mario Brothers to sell them as much.
Oh, no.
Like I know that's there, but like that's not the focus. It feels like.
Yeah.
So
the focus is for me to spread the love of incredibly obscure, weird games.
Yeah.
I am a tremendous defender of games that people really hate. I'm trying to find Morning Musume Space Venus behind me right now because
Space Venus. I don't know if I know that.
Hold on. I have oh man, I don't know if I can find it right now, but I have in the shelf behind me. I'd have to pull games to go. I have 20 copies of it because I buy it every time I see it. And in the whole time I've been running this store, I've sold 3 copies of it. Like but one of these days, someone's going to do a hidden gems video and they're going to know. It was about a girl group with like 15 members called Morning Musume, and they're singing their songs, and it's set in space, and they're defending the galaxy using something called the sexy beam. It is not a good game, but it is a great game. And it's a game that's barely a game, but it contains all these like interactive, like make a music video segments or whatever. And it's just, and the songs are dumb, but like they clearly put a lot of work into it. Like all these kinds of costumes, this FMV, this early CGI. And I've tried. And at this point, I think I'm selling it for like $4 or something. Like nobody wants it, but I will continue to buy it.
You can throw one in my next box if you want, and I'll buy it from you.
All right. Maybe your videos. I'm selling it for $3. Yes.
$3 is a bet I'm willing to make. So.
$4. But
$4,
whatever. But I was just about to say I buy it for like $3. So there's no profit motive here. I don't carry a lot of the Grail games because I don't consider myself an expert on things like grading games or knowing what is, and like I never list anything as being CIB because I don't know what that means. Early on, I thought complete inbox means box game manual. You know, that seems what you'd want, but no. I found out later it also includes registration card, which is pretty rare in Japan because a lot of people in Japan actually sent those things in because you often got something if you did.
Yeah.
And then, but like it's so much more than that. Now it's like if it's a Nintendo game, it needs to have the Club Nintendo point card thingy, and like if it's an early Dreamcast game, it might be one of the ones that had a scratch off card that was in there, and it's only CIB if the card hasn't been scratched. And I'm like, nope, this is not my market. You know?
Yeah.
I pick up games that I find that look like a good deal, and I sell them for what I hope people would think was a good deal.
Yeah.
You know, and like it's curated. The music section is music I like.
Yeah.
You know, which is why nobody buys anything.
I had one friend like go bulk buy music from you at one point. I was surprised he did that. But yeah. So I mean, I think one thing that is important to note about all this is like you are going into stores to buy these, right? It's like there's, I mean, I guess with retro games, there's not really a supplier, right? But you're not really buying games from people. You're not getting trade-ins or anything like that. No. You are just going to stores, going to the shows. I assume book offs and things like that. I don't know. Do you like have a pretty healthy set of stores you go to? Or you go to the kind of a, I know the used game market has kind of shrunk a lot in Japan from what it said, but like, is it just like a set of stores you kind of go around?
I mean, there is, but like a lot of the stores that there used to be 7 game stores in my town, and now there's 3. You know, so like it's gone down a lot because you know people can't compete with the internet so much, and but whenever we go somewhere, when I travel or whatever, I'll look up what game stores are around there.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're making a run to Costco to buy cheese or something like that, I'll hit 3 stores along the way. Mm-hmm. And almost everything is not worth picking up these days. Mm-hmm. And that is very sad. But
not worth picking up in what sense? What would you
in that like it's more expensive than it should be, mm-hmm. or is there was a day where a lot of games were like under 500 yen, and you could pick up almost anything, and then you had your rare stuff, of course, still, and you had your newer stuff that was more expensive, but now, like very, very, very common games are going for a lot of money. What was it? What did I see? Like Super Mario Brothers 2 for the Famicom disk system is now a game that's behind the glass case.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 million copies of that game made.
Yeah.
Same with Zelda, but it's just because of the inflation. I mean, I get it. Supply and demand. People want that game. I do wonder how many people are playing games anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, now I know I've got wall of games behind me.
I mean, I do too. So,
but the thing is, like, I don't have many games that are my collection.
Yeah,
I keep a small number of really nostalgic games, and everything else is just like a rotating collection. Do you know what I mean? Like, I play it when I get it because I test everything. Because that's something I noticed too, is like junk has become junk. Here, let me. You might know, Matt. You might know what I'm talking about because
I think so.
When you were in Japan before, you'd go to the junk bins and there'd be games that were almost pristine, but they were listed as junk because they didn't shine in the sun. And
they'd be like 200 yen or something, and you'd be like, what the heck? This is that's great.
Yeah. Oh, here's a copy of Earthbound for 200 yen. Oh, on the back, someone had written their name. Oh no,
Yeah.
But now, like, you get it, and it very well may not work. It, like, before they listed it as junk as kind of like a, buyer beware, but it's definitely going to work. But now it's like, it probably doesn't work. You're going to have to give it a bit of love. So that used to be where I would get a lot of the games. And unfortunately, the prices on games on my store have had to go up as well, because I can't charge less than I pay for them,
Yeah.
But that's maybe why. So people are always like, why aren't you restocking this or this or this? And it's because I can't find it at the price that I think would be worth buying it for. That's why my PCFX section is down. My first store, I would sell copies of Vinnk PCFX for $200, and I would buy them for $150. And so and it seemed like there would be a never-ending supply. Like if I went to a big enough store, my town didn't have them, but like if I went to a big city or whatever, they'd have them under the display case, but they existed. But I can't list a game right now for $2,000. There's definitely someone who's going to buy it, but the person who pays $2,000 to buy a game knows that game very well and knows what to look for, and I don't. You know what I mean? Like, what scratch is too big of a scratch? My policy is if I can play the game and it doesn't, because
doesn't skip, or at least it boots and runs, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, I have boxes of games upstairs that are games that work perfectly, but they look a little bit too scratched to me for my naked eye, so I don't sell them. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I might just run a sale sometime where, like, a buyer beware box. Like, if a game doesn't work, I throw it away, but like, I got tons of ones that it's just like, is someone who's a collector going to like this?
I mean, Filler, you're on like the other side of that at one point. I remember you had a video about Vinnk where you had bought one for a pretty good price, and I think it came in shipping and was it broken or did it have a scratch on? I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, no, I was going to mention. Yeah, I think I got it. It was probably around the same thing, like $200 or something. So I was like, sweet. And but like they shipped it, and from what I could tell, they basically just left the disc in the box, like on the spindle, and it popped off in shipping, and it actually cracked right on the inner ring. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I went ahead and like tried to get insurance reimbursement from the post office, and they gave me like a huge runaround, and like I never got any money back for it. So thankfully I was able to find, I think at the time I was able to find another copy of it for like $150 or something like that. So it was probably around the same time when you were dealing in it. It was still, it was an expensive game, but it was much more reasonable. But yeah, no, it's different. Like when you're dealing with games that are, $2,000, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a different liability that you're dealing with. Like, what if you ship it and somebody, it breaks in shipping, or what if somebody says that it does? Like, how do you know? And that's a real, like, that's a different situation.
Yeah, and the same with hardware. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the shipping and anything with like a CD drive or whatever. Things are going to get out of alignment. Lenses are going to, I don't want to do that. Like for horror videos, I watch the people evaluating the DK Oldies videos. Do you know what I mean?
They're used seller in the US, I think, right?
Yeah. So like, but apparently they say their stuff's refurbished, but a lot of people get it, they open it up, and it's dirty inside. And I'm like, I don't have time to individually clean stuff. I don't want to be the subject of one of these videos. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I never make any claims that my stuff is perfect. The only claim I make is it works when I try it. That's why I'm still very nervous to sell any high-priced Famicom disk system games, because those are ticking clocks.
Yeah.
So like once every year I go through all my disk system games again to make sure they're still working, but like I don't want to buy any really expensive stuff there, because like it's that's got an expiration date on it,
Yeah. And I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you update the photo with each listing every time you list one, right? So it's like the one you're buying is the one you're getting, even if it's the same same page it was on before, right?
So pro tip, if you see something that has kind of a low resolution image with kind of bad lighting, that means that product has not sold for like 4 years, like since my previous camera, So like, you can but I show exactly, because again, I have no idea what's complete in box or whatever. So I find that the best way is not to, I know a lot of stores have like A grading, B grading, C grade, but I don't know what that is. So I just send a picture. And if there's a corner of the manual that's I take a zoomed in picture of that. So like, I don't want anybody to be surprised when they get it, but because of it, I'm a very bad salesman. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not meant to be a salesman. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm one of those people who, if I don't like the game too, it comes across in my description. If you look at my descriptions, there's one like, this is a bad game, you don't want to buy it. Because I don't. It is a very curated store. Very curated store. And
I am very biased in saying it, but whenever I talk to people about your store, I say the prices are always really good. Like when I go to Japan, the prices I see in your store line up pretty well. Obviously, they're slightly more marked up, but that's just the nature of it.
Not
right?
always. Not always. I find that my prices are better than a lot of the. Like I will put my price of game against almost any game at Super Potato, for example.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when you go to start, like when you're like in Akihabara or something like that, the prices on that are like super high. I think like when I was in Nagoya, and I felt like those prices were a lot more just like, okay, this is fine. They have like 80 copies of Monster Hunter 4 for 100 yen. Cool. But I think those were like good prices, but I think probably buying anything in Tokyo in general is probably not. I don't know. You know better than me probably.
Oh no, definitely.
Yeah, but I guess one thing that's like, so obviously, I think everyone who's listening to this show will know retro games prices have kind of gone up, and like I think generally people know about the narrative of Japan's retro market, where it's been shrinking, and then also part of that shrinking is because people have been exporting games to the US, and so the less demand. Also, there's like, oh, why sell Rondo of Blood cheaper in Japan when you can sell it to like someone overseas, right? I think like I don't know if I know this and people don't, but I assume most people have that understanding of kind of what the Japanese retro game market is today, right? Does that seem reasonable?
Oh yeah, and I am an enemy of the because but like again, like I think I do it with the best of intentions, but yeah, that's a lot of how it is. And I mean, also just the idea that like I feel like the pandemic didn't help, obviously, because people were just snapping those things up. You've still got collectors, you've got Japanese people with Wall of Games as well, who are, capturing. Games are sometimes used as decoration.
Yeah.
There's a hairdresser I go to. There's a hairdresser I go to who has a shelf with a bunch of Famicom games on it. There's no Famicom there. They're not being played. I don't know why, but it bothers me. You know what I mean? I'm but it's kitsch, like, well, do what you want, obviously, but at the same time, it's, there's the idea that you're going to go to a game store and pick up a game to play, beat it, and sell it back to the game store is something that a lot of these stores were founded on that just doesn't exist anymore. And as we go more and more digital, I think a lot of the stores are seeing the writing on the wall and getting out while the getting is good.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are just selling their entire stocks online and closing up, and it's tragic, but I understand it.
Kind of leaning into like, so I guess the PCFX, a system like the PCFX kind of has a life cycle of everything, there's the original price, then it dips down because nobody wants this and we're ending the console. And then from there, historically, we see a steady rise on this kind of stuff, right? I'm curious, like, what do you feel like that life cycle has looked like to you? Have there been points in the PCFX life that you feel like you've seen major changes happening? Is it an over time thing, or are there like, has a growing interest felt like you started feeling like you mentioned with Derelict Aggressor earlier? Like I'm curious, like, what is your overall feeling about kind of the life cycle of the PCFX in the retail marketplace in Japan specifically?
I mean, PCFX is a system where like, you'd go to any game store and you'd be able to buy Anime Freak 1, 2, and 3. And they'd be there, and the stores didn't know what to do with them. And they often were in with the PC Engine games because there was no reason to have its own section, And you just see those games everywhere, along with Battle Heat. Battle Heat used to be really, what is it? Ring Angels? No, it's not called Ring Angels. What is it called? The women's fighting. Queen of Queens. That's it. You used to see that a lot. Like, they were just things that people weren't particularly interested in that you'd see. PCFX was a system that, like, I'm not sure 100% what caused its resurgence. I think there's a number of factors. One of them might be emulation. Just in the fact that, like, very few people bought the original hardware, very few people have the original hardware, but a lot of people discovered the system through emulation and then wanted shelf candy. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they don't even have the hardware to run it, but like, they've liked a game they've played on it. Maybe they've liked a fan translation of Pia Carrot and they need to have a copy of their own, But I mean, as much as I make fun of my bad business move of buying 20 copies of them, a lot of the people who did buy them, they don't have PCFX systems, but they played your translation. They liked it and they felt they should own the game.
Yeah.
To go along with their burn disc or whatever they had. You know what I mean? So like, and so I think can I give you a PCFX pet peeve?
Sure.
Zenki is not the only good game on the system, no matter what YouTube will tell you.
I might argue that Zenki's like not that great of a game in general. I think there's some fun flashiness to it, and it's short enough that its weirdness doesn't really matter, right? Like, it's fine.
I would say Zenki is definitely one of the most import friendly games.
Yes,
definitely. And I would say that it as a action game, it is rare on the system. But just like Zeroigar is not a great shooter when compared to a lot of the best of the PCFX shooters. The PCFX shooter. The PC Engine shooters. It's a fine game. I enjoy it. Is it worth what it costs now? No.
Yeah.
Not at all. But like when you see a video about PCFX, you're going to have only what the maker of the video has been able to play.
Yeah.
And they're going to say that the only good games on the system are Zenki, Zeroigar, Chip-Chon Kick. And that's it. That's it there.
Yeah.
They probably won't even delve any farther. Even though there's plenty more they could play, I think that's where the videos stop.
I mean, that's I feel like, I always call it the Holy Trinity, right? Yeah. I feel like it is just one of those things that, like, when you try to look up anything about the PCFX, a lot of these games, nobody really knows what to make of them, right? Like there are impressions out there about Blue Breaker and stuff like that, right? But I don't think there's a video out there that's like accessible to people about Blue Breaker, right?
No.
Like, I don't think anyone's really done that. And so
Yet.
Welcome to Pia Carrot, though, has had some videos. I don't know.
It has.
I know Noel's video. I don't know if there's been more than that. I believe you've told me before that there have been people that have made Pia Carrot videos going in expecting not to like it, and then kind of came out the other side and ended up really enjoying it, right? So
one of the only PCFX YouTubers I saw in the early days was someone who just went in and just didn't speak a lick of Japanese and would just go and yell at the videos and just insult the videos. You've probably found these videos or whatever. It was just, he must have been drunk or whatever. Like just yelling at it, like, and I was like, and it's like, because that's all that was out there at the time, that was like, it's now that people are rediscovering it. But like, I hate that so many of the PCFX videos now are like top reasons why PCFX failed. It's just like, it did fail. It failed. I mean, it did fail. But like, it didn't understand the market more. So it didn't anticipate what the PlayStation was going to do to the market. But like, it was a continuation of a very successful console, and it continued those type of games. It's just that the market changed.
And if some of it too is like, a lot of it is just the I don't know what you call it, just like the backroom type stuff, right?
Sure.
And if developer support or something dries up for a system, right? Like, what was happening on the PCFX with the developers that were there, was still interesting stuff. I think that's one of the things that's kind of sad about the PCFX is like, there's a good system and there are good games and there's a good library of games and there were like passionate developers doing interesting things on it, which is why like it's sad to see, when, I don't know, like nobody talks about any of those games for good reasons. Like they're not the most accessible games either.
Sure. There's also the fact that a lot of the quite good games on the system got ported to other systems, like any of the Graduation or Angelique games or whatever, which were good games. I mean, I don't play Ruby Party games much myself, but like they're very good versions of those games. But like, there's no reason to buy the system for them. Of course, retrospect is everything, but man, I just wonder how a PCFX, if it had really followed, if it had been a true successor to the PC Engine in the way that we got a Bomberman game, we got FX Genjin, if we got, a lot of these, they continued. They're like, we have a system that does fantastic full motion video, better than any other system out there. We're going to make sure all of our games take advantage of it. Was a misstep. But at the time, it seemed like it would be a good way to differentiate your system from the other systems. It's.
One thing I thought a lot about after our last podcast as well was think about like I kind of PlayStation. I played Final Fantasy VI on the Super Nintendo, but PlayStation was really like where I first got into Final Fantasy, and just thinking like how important and impactful those like CG scenes were in that game to me in some ways, right? And just like how impressive that was, even if it's not running on the disc, but like just seeing the world realized in such a complete way that I feel like, you know, I grew up a lot around like 3D games specifically. So I think there's a big discussion to be about like how beautiful a world can be in 2D versus 3D, especially 3D that early. But like for me, it was like just seeing that world in clarity was really, really, I think, impressive to me when I was a kid at the very least. And so I was thinking about that a little bit after we were talking about the FMV part last week and Meijing talking about wanting to capture that China warrior feel of here's this giant sprite on screen, you know.
Yeah.
We're better than Famicom.
Definitely. I hold that if the system had come out in the United States and all of its library had been translated, it would be considered a classic right now, because the type of games that a lot of people are very nostalgic for, the 2D animated games, like you've got your Lunars, like we mentioned earlier, Magic Knight, things like that, like it's kind of like a lost of like a 2D but using modern technology. You know what I mean? It's a game with anime cutscenes that are lovingly done, not just in engine. You know, they were their own thing. Full voice acting with often the original, you know, like professional voice actors, you know, and like your standard 2D game tropes. Like if the whole library was available, I think I would play through almost every game on the system. You know, I really do feel that there's a lot, if you're into adventure games or RPGs, there's so much to love here. And it's just been inaccessible to a lot of foreign gamers. But like, yeah, no, I'm lying to myself. But let me explore this delusion. If they made a PCFX Mini, where everything was translated into English, and it had the best of the library on it, and it was available, I was going to originally say that would find an audience because of how gamers have nostalgia for that time.
Yeah.
But I realized it would sell like garbage. It would not sell well, but I would buy 10.
I had a Japanese PCFX fan make fun of me for mentioning a PCFX Mini on Twitter once.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
It was pretty funny. So he still, like, I don't know. He makes like a bunch of PCFX memes for some reason. So it's like Metal Gear Solid 5 and he like photoshops Rolfie's heads into like scenes and stuff. I'm like, I really appreciate what you're doing, even though I don't understand any of this.
Oh, man, the thing is, like, there's a very nice library if you like adventure or RPG games and can get past the language requirements. So PCFX is a very hard system for me to recommend to people.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons we don't talk about it on Famicom Dojo, because I don't know if there's anywhere to really go with that. But I am a defender of the system, you know, like.
I mean, I kind of separated this out from my own podcast because I kind of felt like, you know, as much as I talk about it there, the audience for PCFX stuff was just so different from the audience of like, hey, I'm talking about Love and Berry for the 8th time this week.
If we're still, you know, kind of talking about the store, I was curious, you know, being that you sell PCFX games,
sure,
like what PCFX games move, like in terms of, you know, sales and things like that. And also, like, I'm curious too, and, you know, I don't want you to dox any of your customers or anything like that, but like, you know, I don't know, do you sell worldwide? And like, have you noticed, you know, any particular, I don't know if it just breaks down by general, you know, population and things like that, but, you know, are you selling PCFX games to folks in, you know, in Brazil or in France or in, you know, the UK or, you know, that kind of thing? I'd just be curious, like, you know,
it's
customers,
France.
you know,
It's France. I don't know why, but it's France. It's
okay.
I think it's just that anime is so popular there in general that like the games that are not just PCFX, but the games tied to anime series, like Slayer's games sell to France. Like I don't like PCFX. It's America and France is the majority of it. It really is. And like, I mean, by America, I mean it sells to Ben. I mean, like,
you admittedly, like, you usually will contact me if you find something and you're like, do you want this? And I'm like, sure, I'll take it. So I kind of get like a monopoly to some extent. I feel a little bad about it sometimes, but
in the past, what sold was I was able to acquire copies of things like Chip-Chon Kick, Tokamiki Card Paradise, which is very playable, which was always kind of expensive. That one, I mean, percentage-wise, like, what does it go for these days? Maybe $200 or whatever. But like, even when I was selling before, it was an expense. It was a $100 game 10 years ago. So like, because it just never got a lot of copies. But like,
I feel like it was a low print run.
Yeah, I think
it felt very budget too, because like I think it reuses a bunch of stuff from like a Saturn game and stuff.
Yeah, it does. But I got it right behind me. I like it. I
was incredibly surprised how much I enjoyed it. Like, I've never played a game like that before, like a strip poker game, and like I kind of get the appeal now. Like, I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense, actually. Like, there's kind of a, like, you have to be willing, like, it's one of those things where, like, with sexual content in specific, right, you kind of have to be willing to just give the game the benefit of the doubt and just let it do its thing, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I think if you go in not, like, super like I'm gonna make fun of this, but also not being super weird about it, it's just kind of this weird thing where you get like these sexual teases at you while you're playing cards, and like you get to see the characters through those teases, right? Like that's kind of how the characters are built. It's a really interesting game.
I feel the same way about Mahjong games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's unique to that game specifically, but like that was my first experience with that, so I was like, oh, this makes some sense actually. So
but I mean, basically, those were the games that would move. But like, I can't get those games anymore. I just cannot. I get requests for those games, and this is how PCFX game requests go. Hey, can you get Zenki, Chip-Chon Kick, and Zirigar? And I go, yes, they will be this much, this much, and this much, and no response. You know, like that's that's how it goes. But like, those were the ones that sold, but like, and I'll do it as a request if someone wants it, but I can't just buy a bunch of those because I just don't know if because this is where I get back to the statement I made before. There gets to be a point where it's hard not to justify piracy, like on PCFX games, because the people who are buying Zenki right now are not playing Zenki for the most part. The people buying Zenki right now want it as pristine as possible so they can resell Zenki to someone else who's not going to play Zenki.
Yeah.
Because they're playing it on emulator, you know, and they're maybe selling it to someone who fell in love with it on emulator, and whatever. I mean, I'm not going to, this isn't a holier than thou type of thing. I don't play a lot of emulation myself because I don't have time, you know. Unless it's a fan translation, I'll do that because of just the ease.
I find now that like I used to be really stingy about playing the exact copy I had. But now these days, if there's some reason that's a problem, like a fan translation, or maybe I got a copy of the game and it doesn't work, I don't go and buy another copy. I'm just like, I'll just grab an image of this and just play that. Like it does. The big thing with like a physical game on the shelf for me is that like it is in some ways a reminder that I need to play something. That's kind of the big thing for me. And it also focuses what I need to play as well. So,
but the things that sell well now, I mean, again, nothing, I don't move a lot of PCFX games these days.
Yeah.
Because I've had to make the prices what I pay for them, you know?
Yeah. Sure.
I used to be able to get copies of Battle Heat for 500 yen. Now Battle Heat's a $25-$30 game these days.
Yeah.
So I got to sell it for go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's another thing that I'm kind of wondering. I mean, I guess knowledge of prices comes from when I was collecting.
Sure.
And that's, of course, sort of overseas and things like that.
Yeah.
But when I was collecting PCFX in probably around 2011, 2012, like in that range. And then also, just kind of like in the 90s, maybe, sort of like when I first went over to Japan.
Sure.
So like, I mean, I'm used to like Welcome to Pia Carrot. That's a $15 game, right? Languisher I got for like I think it was $10, honestly, right?
Yep, that's where it would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am kind of curious, like, I mean, so like something like Welcome to Pia Carrot, do you have an impression, like, what you would be trying to sell that for now? Is that still like a cheap game, or like have things like that started to go up too?
I will probably sell it cheaper than stores will sell it, because I still have some copies left from a failed business move. I sell it for 25, but you're gonna find it often at stores for around 30, 35. It depends where you are. Like, where you find PCFX games that are still cheap, or is if you find them at a store that doesn't know what they are. Sometimes you find them mixed in with PC games.
Sure.
And then they're going to be super cheap because they don't know what they are. Can Bunny or something I got for $2 because it was just in this box of like random PC games. But for the most part, people know what they've got now when it comes to PCFX, because it's rare enough that like, even like the cheapest of cheap games, like, we're thinking Graduation 2, Angelique Special, what when you were collecting, how much would those go for? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, seriously,
$7,
like
$5
and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
But like, I was at a store. I was at a store 3 weeks ago, and they had very few PCFX games there at all. Yeah. And they had a copy of Angelique Special, big box, purple box, whatever. It was $40. Yeah. And I'm just like, what? That's easily one of the most common games on the system. Yeah. And it's also a game that's available for every other platform. Angelique in Wonderland goes for 25, 30 these days. Like, the thing is, when I see them at a price that's lower than that, I buy them and I put them on the store.
Yeah.
And but that's why there's rarely new games. I felt really bad because what did I list recently that I had to price way higher than I think it's worth? It was a Firewoman.
Toy Gumi.
Yeah, I'm selling it right now for $42, and that's a game that I used to sell for $20. It's
that's not too bad though. But
no, it's not. I think it's reasonable. Basically, if I can't sell a game for within the lower 10% of what people are selling it for on eBay, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
I try to beat eBay every time, but I can't. Sometimes you got people who are, but then again, those, some of the here's the game, it's $20. It'll be $35 shipping. It's like, I can't beat those prices. I can't.
It's weird with like eBay, because like, I remember when I first was interested in First Kiss Story, because you told me about Hugh Next Fighter being in there. The only copy on eBay was like $80. And that game is, I believe, even today, not worth that much. But
no, but it's gonna be like a $40-$45 game these days. Yeah. Maybe 50. Like,
when I last went to Japan, I looked for PCFX games. I saw like 4 copies of First Kiss Story, nothing else. And they were all, I think they were like 30, 40, something like that, within that range at the time. So,
but yeah, it used to be, I mean, most of the games used to be cheap. The only games that were ever always expensive was like Zerigar. Chip-Chan Kick was a game that I used to pick up for 50, which is still a lot. Like, I don't think like those games never went under their retail price ever. Like, I don't think they ever did, but most everything else did, but has dipped back up. Take a game like Graduation Real, like the Graduation, the Sotsugyo game that uses real footage.
Yeah.
That
real
game that game used to sell for $20 or whatever, and like it's like 120 now. Like it's ridiculous, and I don't know why. Did one of those actresses become famous recently, or something? Like I don't know why, because that game just shot up like with no particular rhyme or reason. I mean, all PCFX games went up, but Graduation Neo generation or whatever went up. It doubled in price, but this one like went up, like almost 10 times in price. It's crazy.
Do you think any of that demand comes from people in Japan at all, or do you think this is a largely Western, France, America kind of driven increase in demand for PCFX games?
That's a hard one to say, because as I said, it's such a niche product even here in Japan, that like there's definitely people who are going to try to collect a series or collect an obscure game. There's always going to be those people even in Japan, but like it's really hard to say. Like, I'll tell you, I've met 3 Atari Jaguar fans in Japan. Like that was their system that they were super excited about. And the people I know who have PCFX are people like me. It's one of many consoles they have. They're not necessarily PCFX fans. They're gaming fans in general.
Yeah.
And they happen to have a PCFX. But I've never met someone who's like, I'm a PCFX fan, but I've met 3 Jaguar fans. Like it's, it's hard to say exactly.
Yeah.
I think definitely there are people who have discovered the system. I feel, and I might be way off base here, but I feel that there are definitely people who discovered it from the Pia Carrot translation. I would not be surprised at all, because as far as I know, is that the first translation of Pia Carrot for anything?
I believe so.
Because I know there was an anime that came out dubbed, but like I think that's the first. And so for people who were interested in that, they found that, and like that's a gateway drug to the PCFX. I'm not saying I blame you. I'm not saying that exactly, but and then of course YouTube has contributed a lot to, like, some people will just want to buy something just for its obscurity without anything else. Like they're going to want to buy something just because no one has had it or heard of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's happened with PCFX a lot. And yeah, it's really hard to say. Like Japanese sellers of PCFX definitely know what they have now, though, because early on I would go to Yahoo auctions and I would get people selling off their collection. So they would sell a system with a bunch of games. And I'd buy it really, really cheap. But I don't go to Yahoo auctions at all anymore, because now everybody knows what they've got.
I think I like was trying to fill out a box that I had through Buy or something, and like 3 or 4 years ago, like the Toy Gumi was like $45 there or something like that. And I just threw it in because I was just like, I need something to make me feel okay about shipping this box that had a bunch of like Dojin goods in it. Basically, I need to shove something in here. But
speaking of that, I got to make sure your soundtrack gets into your box.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I forgot about it until you mentioned that right now. Yeah.
You know what? Now you reminded me of something. Photo discs on the PCFX. You have told me you have had an interest in this, and I don't know how far you've gone down this line. So if you could describe this, because I don't know how much people know about this, describe what this is first and foremost, and then tell me.
So basically, Kodak tried to launch this photo CD product, and it came out in the States as well. And it was a way you could get your photos mastered or whatever. And the only country it really did very well in, it did well in the United States for professional photographers getting the discs made at the Kodak. But like, they also tried to release discs with pictures already on them. And this was something that didn't really take off anywhere else, but it basically, in the United States, the people who bought these players used them for their own photos or whatever. But in Japan, the idea of buying a picture disc with often idols or something connected with anime did fairly well for a time. So there were, oh God, do I have any? Oh, I got something. I got one. Oh my goodness. Pack Rat wins again. So this is, oh my God. Okay, whatever. This is an idle disc.
Mm-hmm. Is it like a blue face on her shirt? It's like she's got a ballerina outfit on or something.
No,
yeah.
she's got sunny side up fried eggs on her boobs. So
okay,
yes, they're there.
But anyway, this is an interesting one, and this will be in the video that I'm making because most of them are purely photo albums. So like here is a Ghost in the Shell. Can I show that? Hold on, I'm gonna cover her. This is Ghost in the Shell. And like it's gonna be lots of pages of information. Like, and this is the disc, and it's got a nice little book that goes with it. And you could play this in a PCFX, you could play it in a 3DO, or with a either hardware card, or something called the Photo CD Enabler. You could play it in a Sega Saturn.
But PCFX has like an actual built-in support for this.
It's built in. Built in. So 3DO, I think 3DO played them off the shelf as well.
Mm-hmm.
The PlayStation never had an official means, but like people made a CD reader. But anyway, and for the Sega Saturn, there were either a card you put in the back of your Saturn. There was also the MPEG card. Usually had photo CD available, or you'd load this disc, which would put the software into RAM, which would be enough to load. And basically, it was just pictures, but like it wasn't. But like how Americans know photo CD was just these picture discs. But like how it was used in Japan was they often had music to accompany the pictures, and then you could also have voice to go with the pictures. Now the pictures themselves, you could zoom in, zoom out. The resolution was about not like beyond HD, but not that, like 2000 pixels by something. It was fantastic for the time, amazing for the time when digital cameras were often like 640 by 480. But like, so you could zoom in and do things like that. So it led heavily to like the kind of etchy stuff, people liked that. I mean, it was like, it appealed to niche otaku markets. Like there's a disc that I found that was just a variety of guns, because like someone wanted to see all the bits and pieces, or like, but a lot of it was like idols and things like that. Now, but what makes this disc interesting is its interactivity. In the same way,
people listening to the audio, this is the Back to the Fried Egg.
Fried Egg Girl, yeah.
Yeah.
This is Yokoyama Chisa, who's connected with Tenchi Muyo. So,
she
voice of Sasami and Sakura in Sakura Wars. But anyway,
nice.
The disc itself, you'll most likely find it like this. But anyway, this is slightly interactive. Oh, it lists PCFX right on the back.
I feel like you've showed me some before that have had PCFX listed specifically. Yes.
But anyway. So this is a photo disc, but it's also interactive. It is like a choose your own adventure thing. And they've made it's like a sci-fi epic, whatever, and you go around the ship. And now the company that you might know right now is what is it? Idea Factory, who's famous now for like the Neptunia series. They got their start making interactive photo CD games. They made a game called like Dark Chaser. Which is like a sci-fi like they made a variety of different games, and I'm trying to collect a bunch of these and make a video of it because there's nothing in English on the internet about it. I feel like, as obscure as the PCFX is, this is the dream within a dream of obscurity. Like it is. Because it didn't take off, but like the idea was that these games would be fully multi-platform, and some of them are like Myst-like and things like that, but it would be able to be run on a 3DO, on a PC, on a Mac, on a Windows machine, on with the proper card on a Sega Saturn, and like the idea is, or a set-top player. Kodak sold their own players to hook to a TV, like. Obviously, you're not going to get a console experience there. There's no video. there's no, you can't really have any graphics that weren't already pre-rendered. So like if you're going to have, so it was mainly choose your own thing, but it would lead incredibly well to a genre that was just kind of starting to emerge, which was the fully voiced visual novel. And like the ones where interactivity wasn't so necessary. Now, the problem with these is that you're limited to like a certain number of pictures. So like for a lot of modern visual novels, they wouldn't work because you've got like an hour of audio, of high quality audio that you could do. And a lot of the visual, you play something like Steins Gate, you're looking at a 40-hour, voice thing. So it would have to come on a variety of discs. But there was the idea that you could have kind of these bite-sized adventure games, or like choose your own adventure, or like Mist Light games. And I've been collecting them for a long time, and I have a lot of the bigger names of them, so the thing is, like, this one is one I acquired recently, which I didn't know. I'd heard that it was interactive, but I didn't know how. There's so many that what I should do is I should make the video right now. I should immediately make the video before someone else does.
Before we publish this interview.
Before the interview comes out. Because as far as I know, I'm the only one who cares at all about this.
And in a lot of ways, I think like what's interesting about it though is like this, it does fit the image, like it fits what the PCFX was doing very well though, right? Like it is this part of the console that is kind of just complete. Like, I'm not saying, I don't know if it was popular, if people were regularly using these on PCFXs, right? But it seems like a part of the console that is just kind of a black spot with no information other than this exists.
I feel like the PCFX was the one that was made most for it, because the compression, they sold themselves as an animated JPEG console. They always played up the whole thing like that. And like I mean, maybe not at the beginning, but like, a lot of games were played with the mouse and things like that. I feel like just the interface lends itself better than when I do it with a 3DO with the controller or whatever. Like, and the Sega Saturn player does not support the mouse and things like that. So like,
the PCFX version has mouse support for these.
In my brain it does.
Okay,
I will have to confirm that.
If we do a mouse episode like we've talked about, maybe we need to talk about this as well.
I have to check. I don't have many photo CDs that I can play in mixed company. More than 50% of the discs are porn. That's just how it is. And of what's remaining, a lot of them are anime collections and things like that, because that's something that lends itself well to, because if you put them in your PC, you could also like print out the images and things like that. So a lot of them like have like, for Gundam, there are things that have like intricate technical manual type details that you'd zoom in on and tech out. It's a very niche market,
Have you encountered the Janus photo CD collection?
I don't think I have.
What is a Janus photo CD collection?
It's so my introduction to the PCFX photo CDs was a game called Gokuraku Arena. I don't know why specifically that one. It must have been, it came up on, PCFX World, PC Engine FX or something like that. And so I wanted to get a copy of that for a long time. And finally I was able to get it, like a disc image of it. And I haven't even really played it. But I just, kind of confirmed that, this is a photo CD and it works in the PCFX. This is cool. So once we started doing this podcast, I started thinking about that again. And I was like, are there more of these photo CDs kind of specifically? And like you said, this is a game with adult elements to it. Right?
Sure.
Limited interactivity and that sort of thing. But I mean, you're basically talking something along the lines of like the DVD games, like the DVD sort of visual novels and stuff that were also popular for a little while. But I started looking into the Janus photo CD collection. And I did not realize the extent of that collection. There are like dozens and dozens of games in that in that set.
Oh, wow.
I started looking on like Yahoo auctions, and I was like, oh, here's like somebody's got 13 of them available, and then I see like the numbers go up to like volume 46 or something. It's really insane.
Oh yeah. I mean, when it comes to adult titles, there's so much. I mean, like when you said Janus, I didn't want to jump to a conclusion, but I'm like, I think that's a porn company. Okay, yes. So yeah, okay. Well, yeah, but I didn't want to misstep. But like, yeah, there's tons of those. What I'm trying to explore with my video is something I can show on YouTube that has
it's tough.
That has when they tried to go a little bit legit. But yeah, if we go into those. I mean, that was a big use of photo CD. Even the ones that were non-interactive.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, even the ones that were non-interactive were often the model narrating what was going on with like, or telling a story like, I'm going to the beach now. Whoops, my bikini fell off in Hawaii. I don't know, like that's but like there'd be sound effects in the background. They were trying to do like beyond what a photo book would be available to do, and I don't collect many of those other than for the trying to find out the limits of the technology of photo CD, because I still, when you're playing a game, I still wonder if the photo CD player actually can remember, for example, an inventory, or if it really is just skipping to another. Like, I don't know if there's any logic involved or if it's purely a tree.
Yeah.
Like I'm still trying to figure that out, because like if you backtrack on something, are you actually backtracking to a previous scene and the game remembers you've been there, or is your backtracking actually just forward again in the tree? Like I'm trying to figure out, because that would allow you to make a game like Myst. But if it's not, you're much more limited. Like it's just the illusion of freedom. There we go.
Yeah, I'd imagine to some extent, like unless it creates a save file as well, like you wouldn't.
Oh, you wouldn't. Yeah, you definitely. You definitely have to play it in one sitting. But yeah.
I think that stuff's super fascinating, though. I would like to look at that further, but if you make a video about it, that means I don't have to look at it. So,
all right, okay, yeah.
But I know that's a huge ask. Whenever somebody's like, "You should make a video about something," I'm like,
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, it's the scope. It's both so intensely obscure, but also there's so much to it.
Yeah.
That it's daunting. Because if they only made 10 of these, I would acquire the 10 and make a video on it. But I don't even know how many exist. There's no list. There's no like. I feel like the moment I put out a video, I will discover something new. Because originally I thought there were just the 3 made by Idea Factory, and I bought those, and I'm like starting to make the video, and I'm like, no, there's way more.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is essentially another industry, right? I know it's technically like I don't know the scope of this, but it is photo CDs as a thing was like a particular segment of the market, right? And so, and it's multi-platform. It works across all devices and stuff that supported it. So like, yeah, there's probably way more than you'd expect. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is, I mean, this is getting into like video advice kind of thing, right? I think the big thing is like trying to highlight what the format does rather than focus too much on like each individual game, right? Like what does the format delivers on, rather than like, okay, Janus 26, what does Janus 26 do, right? Versus the other Januses.
Yes, exactly. I don't need that, but like I would like to at least like know what companies were doing it, and and like I don't know. I mean, I think I got one shot to make a video about this, because I feel like if it goes nowhere, that's fine. But if it goes somewhere, I've lost my chance to be the one who made the definitive video. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. So my last question to you, Vinnk, is basically, we've talked kind of about the PCFX's lifespan, how it's been viewed over the years, also like some more recent developments with fan translations we touched on a little bit and stuff like that.
Sure.
What would you like to see the future of the PCFX be going forward? Like what do you feel like are the things that you would like to see happen around the system? Whether it be from like a fan base standpoint or developments in terms of like, accessories or people just appreciating certain games more or something like that, right? What?
So the PCFX Mini would be about this big, and like it would take USB controllers, HDMI out, and I think okay. Realistically though, I would love it if the work on for from a foreign perspective, if the work on these translations kept going, because I know it's best to like hit the games that like have some connection to like a current game. Like people are going to want to translate anything that's never been released regarding like Shin Megami Tensei or something like that, but like those games are in no danger of disappearing, and like people will always be interested in those. But like I feel like the idea of PCFX has the potential to be lost because nobody's revisiting it. And when they do, they're revisiting it with a negative light. Like there's been a huge resurgence from the PC Engine, turbo-graphx, stuff like that, because people have been making lost gems videos and like and like even consoles that had kind of a bad rep, like the Atari Jaguar, are people are reevaluating, and making homebrew and things like that, that push the system far beyond where it's ever been. I don't know if there's ever going to be a homebrew community on the PCFX, just because so few people own the original hardware. Any product you made would have such a limited range that it makes more sense to do it on any other console, But the thing is, if there was a homebrew community, you could you could get a Bomberman on there, and which it always needed, or something like that. But what I would like to see happen is I would like to see Team Innocent come out for the PC because
that might have a chance. So I think you're setting your sights, realistically.
Because I talk about Team Innocent so much, but there's so few people I can recommend it to. Because whereas I think you don't need to know Japanese to play it, that's a hard ask.
You have to be willing to kind of absorb the atmosphere of the game and absorb the feeling that the characters give you and stuff like that. Evaluate them in how they portray themselves rather than with the actual words, right? So,
and be willing to maybe use a guide for the parts you can't understand, or set your phone up in a place where you can use oh my God, I wish I had that when I first came to Japan. The whole like Google, that's amazing. That's amazing. But like, no, when I was playing through Sakura Wars, I had these like translation guides like printed out on these reams of paper. And like, okay, I'm at this part. I gotta, okay, the three options are this. Okay. But you know what? Loved those games. Kind of miss it. Kind of miss those days.
I guess just speaking of, games that you would like to see translated, just kind of selfishly, anything aside from Team Innocent that you think would really like? I mean, just considering like how do we keep the PCFX from obscurity? Not to put you on the spot if you don't have
say Shanghai Triple Threat.
There you go.
That's the game that needs it.
Someone's doing Blue Chicago Blue right now. Actually, the Sega Saturn version. Oh my goodness. I mean, selfishly, I would like Blue Breaker, just because I like that kind of RPG quite a bit.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the games, they will probably get translations on other consoles, like any of the Angelique stuff. Someone will work on that and probably get it. But like the PCFX exclusives are the ones that I think need to be really focused on more than the others, because those really do have, that strong like possibility of disappearing. Last Imperial Prince. Last Imperial Prince would be a good one, because like the type of like side scrolling like action RPG has really disappeared as a genre. You had like Ys 3, you had Zelda 2, you had a few others, but like nobody really makes them anymore.
And stuff.
Sure. But like I feel like that one would be both is not super dialogue heavy compared to a lot of the other RPGs, would be one that would be very playable still, I think, because I played it even without the Japanese, and like I feel like there's a nostalgia for those type of games coming back, but no one's really making them. So like, yeah, Last Imperial Prince would be one I would choose.
Can I make an argument? I know this is what you want.
Go for it,
Vinnk, but I'm going to tell you what I was just thinking about.
All right, tell me what you want. What you really want.
I really like Ojo Sama Susomu.
Okay.
And the reason I bring this up specifically, it is entirely playable in English, or like sure. Without knowing it. Yeah. That game is really focused on its characters and the encounters you have with characters. Yeah. And I felt like playing that game, not understanding what characters were saying.
Sure.
My reaction was to just run from everyone immediately. Oh, and I get the impression that navigating those different scenarios, because you basically get in this, they're basically trying to capture you. You're an infiltrator, just for people who don't know. Yeah. And then so these detectives I think they're the detectives, right? They basically come and try to capture you, and you have various tools in your inventory to kind of deal with it. And it resulted in a lot of different fun scenarios and stuff like that. Yeah, the one you're up there. And I feel like that part of the game is just something I couldn't appreciate without really understanding what was happening, like dialogue wise. I could be wrong about that. I think Matt, you played it, so you might know differently. But
I think you make a good point for like for letting people know about what's really good on the PC. Like for me, since I could play it, I don't feel like it needs a translation, and I watched the anime as well.
Yeah.
So like I kind of knew, but you're right. But like, that's a game that a lot of people would probably be into, the type of gameplay. Yeah. Same with Firewoman.
Yeah.
That would be a good one too. Yeah.
I think pretty much any like RPG on the system that hasn't been translated would be good, honestly, for the most part. Miraculum being kind of the big one, I think, right? Because that's the exclusive, I believe.
Sure.
It is. Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. I just like shoved my nose into your segment about
that's all right.
What fan translations you want.
I would love to play a fully translated First Kiss story as well. Just because most of the exclusives have merit and value.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, is like what I choose for what should be preserved is definitely what I want to play. But like, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say there's very few bad games on the PCFX.
Ooh, I like that opinion. I don't know if I agree, but I like that you said that.
I mean, I can think of ones that like don't seem suited to the system, and I can think of ones that are definitely more strange. But like, what's a bad game on the PCFX?
So I have a weird feeling about the term bad. When you say bad, usually I think what that means is this does not appeal to mainstream audiences, because at the end of the day, I think there's very, very rarely is there a wrong design decision, but there are more appealing design decisions.
Yeah.
So even something as simple as Team Innocent, when I put that alongside other survival horror games, it just does not function the way it needs to mechanically. It is very iffy in that regard. So when I sit down and like think about how does someone react to Team Innocent, I can't tell them it's Resident Evil in terms of quality, right? It plays differently. It doesn't have that polish. But there are so many things to appreciate about Team Innocent. So it really depends on who you're talking to. And I feel like most PCFX games, they shine in some way. But when you put them against other games like them, like with Zenki and things like that, like they don't play in a way that I think most people would be like, yeah, this feels really good or something like that, right?
Okay.
And a baseline understanding of like how games should be designed, right?
No, I get you.
But you're talking to somebody who like, my favorite video game is one of the worst video games I've ever played. So, it's hard to like, it's a difficult topic, I think, that's more complex than just bad. But I think there's a lot of things about the PCFX that would be unappealing to more mainstream retro audiences, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's fair. I personally, I will take Team Innocent over Resident Evil.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about this right now? I don't know how much time we have. I would be really curious to know why, like, from like a quality perspective. Is that what you mean?
Oh, I don't know if necessarily for a quality perspective,
Okay.
but like Resident Evil, like maybe it's just the setting or whatever. I think I'm more into sci-fi than I am into horror. I think that I felt that Resident Evil created a really nice atmosphere of a scary place. But like for me, Team Innocent felt more epic. I liked the characters more.
No, I agree
Yeah,
with everything
yeah,
you're saying right
yeah,
now. So
yeah.
like I 100% see it. Like there's like it's not a horror game per se, but there's something unsettling about it, right? There's something unsettling about navigating its world.
Yeah. It's there's a definite like Resident Evil creates a sense of fear, definitely, but I feel like Team Innocent creates a sense of loneliness.
I could see that.
Yeah,
Loneliness. I'd also maybe say tension is the other
sure,
one.
Sure, definitely. And again, I love that. I love the anime aesthetic of the 90s. I pretty much stopped watching any new anime. I don't really watch anime anymore, but like that, the late 80s and through till about 2000. I love it. I think it's a really wonderful aesthetic, and it lends itself. And nobody has tried that with a survival horror before. Locked in a room with those two games, I'll take Team Innocent.
I would as well. So
yeah. So like the thing is, like, Ruby Party games are not my cup of tea. But I don't think anybody will make like there's some of the best selling otome games ever made, like, and they're considered classics of the genre, the mahjong games that they have are as slightly higher video quality than the Sega Saturn or PlayStation versions of it, so they're in many ways, depending on how you feel about the PCFX controller, they're the best version of those games. So like I don't know. I'm a defender of games that other people consider bad in general, but like I don't think many PCFX games are broken. I don't think there's, depending on how you feel, some people would feel a game like Yuna is shovelware because it's just a bunch of mini games wrapped around FMV sequences. But a better example is Battle Heat. Nobody would do that today. That would be ridiculous to do hand-drawn animation for a fight. Like no one would even think to do that. And if they did, they would find a way to do it with computers in a way that, cell shading something. But like nobody would do
AI at this point.
Yeah, do it with AI or something. Yeah. So whether Battle Heat is your cup of tea or not, it is in no way shovelware. You know what I mean? Like money was spent, thought was put into it,
I think the only thing that we have really questioned on this show is Tokimeki Card's Paradise seems like kind of a quick port job, but it is a different game from the Saturn version it comes from. It seems more to do with the FMV quality than it is anything else. So it doesn't seem like it seems like more of just the way they had to get the FMV maybe just wasn't
far as because they had to get it into like a JPEG format. So things that were made specifically for it fared very well, but things that were scanned from another source, not as well. And I believe the Saturn version doesn't support mouse and the PCFX version does. But again, I could be very wrong about the things that I'm spouting out with mouses right now.
I believe the Saturn version is also a mahjong game. I think they're different types of games too.
Oh yeah, actually, you're right. You're right. And so
this is way more successful or accessible to me. So I can't play mahjong very well. So
sorry, if we're still making requests, I'd love the Tenchi Muyo game. I really would. Either the PC Engine one or the PCFX one. Like the PC Engine, like that would, now if someone was making a translation, what I'm saying is it's kind of a twofer, because the first disc of the PCFX one is the PC Engine game,
that's right,
just with better graphics. So if one was to translate one of them, they're kind of translating two. Just saying. Sorry, I'm a Tenchi Muyo fan. I am.
I definitely was one of my favorites back in the day.
Yeah. So
Filler has promised to translate all 60 PCFX games before he passes. So
I mean that That is what I would like my mission on this world to be. I don't know. I don't know how far along I'm going to be able to.
A life well lived.
Yes.
Again, I am my Japanese skill is mediocre at best, but if there's any way I can support the efforts you guys are doing to bring either awareness or actual grunt work with, let me know, because I feel I'm leaving no mark on civilization right now, and
you're doing photo CD stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing photo CD stuff.
We can always put people with language and gaming skills to work on fan translation projects. So.
You know what you're doing today, Vinnk?
What?
You are selling people PCFX games on your website, a limited selection.
True.
You can go to japanretrodirect.com to go buy anything from Vinnk. I highly recommend it.
Nice segue. I like that.
Again, I've had great experiences with Vinnk, but also, we've known each other a very long time, so I'm very biased at this point.
Yeah.
But I can't recommend his online store enough. And the PCFX selection quietly seems to come and go on there, but there's only so much you can really do right at this point in terms of availability and accessibility, right? For pricing. So
plus you always take the good stuff before anybody gets a chance to get it. So.
But our fan base does have a lot of, retro game fans for Sega Saturn, PC Engine, all that kind of stuff. And you do stock, basically pretty much everything at this point. Like I don't know how far. I mean, you have Switch games as well, right?
Yep.
So I've definitely looked at like the Police Girl game that you have on Switch like 5 times, and you're like, maybe I'll buy this.
I'm not gonna lie. I bought that game for my daughters, but I have played it when they are not home. So so it's fun. I am not good at video games. Like a rhythm game that's made for 7-year-olds kind of hits the sweet spot for me.
But yeah, a wide range of games. And I think the big thing for me with Japan Retro Direct is like, it's just a good, there's always gonna be stuff that I don't know is another big thing. Like you pick out some really interesting stuff. So if you're interested in exploring more than the typical games and you want physical copies of them, I would recommend it. So there's my plug, my endorsement.
Thank you.
But thank you again for coming today. Did you want to plug anything else? I know you do Famicom Dojo podcast still. And other stuff around that.
Yeah, well, Famicom Dojo podcast, it's about once a month these days, sometimes more, depends. We also have a spin-off show because we found ourselves getting off topic all the time and talking about television. So we have a television show that talks about television shows called Two Boobs Watch the Tube, which is super, which seemed like a fun idea at the time, but now I feel a little embarrassed about. But like you can find all that through the Famicom Dojo website. Just search for Famicom Dojo. That's what you're gonna find.
Check out your photo CD video when it comes out.
Yeah. Subscribe now so you can be notified.
Is that a Famicom Dojo video? If you
it's gonna be a Famicom Dojo.
Okay.
Video. Yeah, it's gonna be Famicom Dojo. Whether Sean likes it or not, like, my personal channel wouldn't get enough exposure at all. So it would be a Famicom Dojo video.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting today. We really appreciate it. A lot of interesting insight on the industry. Like really, I think you just have a lot of interesting insight about used games as a whole in Japan and stuff like that. So getting to see that expanded out to the PCFX is something I've been wanting to do for a while. So
all right. Well, I'm just very, very happy to be on your cast again. So that's love chatting. It was very nice to talk with you, Matt. Long time fan, first time talker, first time caller, first time. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay,
I think we've interacted before in the past.
We have. I just appreciate everything that people are doing to bring like the obscure into something digestible for the masses. So so love this cast too. So I'll be a listener as well as a guest. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you tuning in. Vinnk you can find on Famicom Dojo and his store Japan Retro Direct as well. For us, you can follow us on Twitter and Mastodon, but I really feel like the place we are the most lively
is in the Discord channel. So if you want to keep up with us, keep engaged the community and things like that, join the Discord channel. The links to all three of those things will be in the podcast description, so check that out down there as well. Also, if you want to support us on Ko-fi, we do have a Ko-fi. I've been trying to keep up with the Ko-fi content. Right before this episode, there was a post that went up that kind of looked at the Team Innocent. There's this pre-release footage that came out on a TV show many years ago, back when the system was contemporary, and that pre-release footage had quite a few differences from the final game in terms of visual style and design. So in that post, I really break that down. But you should be able to expect another Ko-fi post sometime, I'd say a few weeks to a month after this episode goes up. I'm trying to keep it where I have one post go up before a podcast and then one post go up afterwards. So if I stick to that timing, that should be, at least a consistent flowish of content over there if you want that. So yeah, check that out. But otherwise, we will see you guys in the next few months here when we come back for our next episode. Bye.